Hi, welcome back to the Alexis Brooks Nutrition Channel, where we talk all things about periods, hormones, and women's health. Today, we're going to be talking about the circadian rhythm. So, if you are someone who feels tired all the time, you wake up and you feel tired, you drink coffee, you're still tired, you sleep 10 hours, you're tired, and maybe you even feel wired at night. So, like you're tired all day long, and all day long you're thinking about going to sleep, and then when it's time to go to sleep, you actually can't because you're just so wired. So this has a lot to do with the circadian rhythm, and those are some clear signs of having some disruptions with your circadian rhythm. So if you do improve your circadian rhythm, get it right back on track, you can get that energy back. You can also improve your menstrual cycle, your fertility, and ovulation, which is tied into fertility. So let's get into what the circadian rhythm is, how it ties into our hormones, some ways to reset it, and what you can look forward to once you get yourself back on track. So, the first thing, what is the circadian rhythm? So, it is a natural cycle of the body. It's our body's internal clock. So, it has a 24-hour cycle. And when we talk about the circadian rhythm, we're talking about two main hormones, which is cortisol and melatonin. And the idea is that these hormones, when they are produced at the proper time, released at the proper time, in the right amounts, then we can feel really energized at times that we should be energized, and we can also be able to have a nice restorative sleep when it's time for us to go to sleep. So, the way this works is that cortisol is our daytime hormone. We can think about it that way. So, it's meant to be higher in the morning. So, it's like our waking hormone, our daytime hormone, our get up and go hormone. So, it should be higher in the day. Not super high. There's an issue if we have like really high cortisol, but it should be higher. And then it should gradually taper down as like the afternoon comes in and the evening, like it's gonna gradually come down. And then once the evening hits, once the sun is going down and it's dark out, that's when melatonin kicks in and begins to be the main hormone of the circadian rhythm that is produced at that time, and melatonin takes over. It then allows us to wind down, feel relaxed, feel start to get those feelings of feeling sleepy, and then when it's time to go to bed, we knock out. Melatonin takes over, and that is our sleep hormone. So the curve should be something like this. It should just be kind of like coming down. Um, yeah. But if you are someone who feels like you are, just tired all the time, you actually might have an issue where your cortisol is low all the time, or maybe it's high, or some sort of disruption with that. So we want to make sure we get that taken care of. And I do want to mention that when it comes to our cortisol, the circadian rhythm and those hormones, specifically the cortisol, can be affected by blood sugars. So we've talked about in the past how blood sugar is like balance is like the foundation of our hormones. This is another example of that. If our blood sugars are not in check, if we end up having a low blood sugar, cortisol is released to help bring our blood sugars back up. And as a result of that, we can end up having those circadian rhythm disruptions as well. So, just a little pin there of why it's really important that we are managing our blood sugars just for overall, for energy, for menstrual health, for optimal health overall. All right, so just reminder there. Okay, so let's talk about some things that we can do in order to reset the circadian rhythm. So there's a lot of things that we can do every day and throughout the course of the day that could really help us to get back on track. So the first thing is we'll start with the morning. We want to be able to get that sunlight to our eyes as early as possible, ideally within 30 minutes of waking up, so that we're able to trigger to our body, hey, it's time to get up. It's time to get up and go and bring that energy back, and we're done sleeping, we're done resting. So bringing sun into the eyes can help out with that. Even sitting by a bright window can be an alternative. It's definitely best to actually get outside and get some unfiltered light where there's no sunglasses, there's no glass or anything like that that would be in the way. But that could be a second best thing to do. So that's the morning. The next thing that we want to keep in mind is that avoid using the snooze button. I know it's like really It could be a habit for us to hit the snooze button as soon as it goes off because we just want those extra 5, 10, 15 minutes of sleep. But this actually is not good for the circadian rhythm because it triggers to our internal clock. It basically confuses the internal clock. Like, wait, are we waking up? We're not waking up. That whole thing. So try to avoid hitting the snooze button. Like put the time that you actually should be getting up or actually will be getting up and do your best to get out of bed. Some ways to help you get out of bed could be to have your alarm clock farther away from you so that you actually have to get out of bed to turn it off. So maybe if you're used to having it on your nightstand or directly next to your bed, something like that, maybe it's across the room or somewhere a little bit further. So you have to put in a little bit more effort. For me, something that helps is I have a habit that I tell myself as soon as I get up, I have to open my curtains, even if it's dark out, and the sun hasn't quite been out yet or come out yet. I will make a habit of at least getting out of bed, opening the curtains, and that helps a little bit. And more recently I trigger myself or it's a habit that I'm like, okay, let's also go to the bathroom. So I'm doing a few things that it gets my body moving, so that I'm less likely to try to like get back in bed and get cozy, especially during these winter months. So that's something that helps me. Maybe it helps you too. But yeah, that's something that to keep in mind about the snoozing. The other thing that you could do in the morning is to make sure you're getting that breakfast. So make sure you're getting a balanced breakfast. We talked about getting like a high protein breakfast that has some healthy fats, that has fiber in there. Because again, we want to make sure that we're setting up our bodies for success, for energy. So you will be able to have more sustained energy if you do have breakfast, especially one that's balanced. And then going back to that blood sugar piece, you also will have balanced blood sugar so that you're not going to be producing more cortisol and throwing the rest of the balance off. Okay, so that's what we can do in the morning. In the afternoon, so these could be helpful, especially if you are someone who gets really maybe you start to get sluggish in the afternoon. Getting some movement in, even if it's just like 10 minutes. Try to get some movement in the afternoon, which can help with the circadian rhythm. If you're able to do it outdoors, even better, but it doesn't have to necessarily be outdoors. Even if you're making a point to be like really intentional, it's like standing, just general movement, but taking a walk could be a great way. Um, and maybe it's after a meal. Bonus points for being after a meal too, right? Thinking about blood sugar, it could be even better for that. Another thing is limit your caffeine at 2 p.m. So at once it hits 2, I would say cut off your caffeine. If not, begin to like really taper it down because caffeine can stay in the body for up to 6 hours. And if you actually are someone who's a slow metabolizer of caffeine, it might stay in a little bit longer than that. So an example of something that you may feel if you are someone that metabolizes caffeine slower is if you're someone that feels like you get heart palpitations or you get anxiety or you feel like fidgety or just like wired when you drink coffee or caffeine, that's a good indication that you probably are a slow metabolizer. So it might stay in your body for longer. And because we do want to use the evening to wind down and allow melatonin to get that signal that, hey, it's time for us to relax and we're going to be sleeping soon. So because we want those signals to come in properly, you also want to make sure that you're cutting off the caffeine. Okay, so those are things for the afternoon. Then we move into the evening. As we move into the evening, I like to tell people to follow the sun. So if the sun is beginning to set, and we're having less of the natural light, also try to limit how much artificial lighting you're getting too. So instead of having like all the lights on in your home and like all the devices on, all that stuff, like can you use the signal of nature to also begin to like turn things down here too? Doesn't mean that you have to be sitting in like a pitch dark house at 6 p.m. if it gets dark early, but begin to soften the light, that sort of thing. But when it does come time for you to go to sleep, you do want it to be dark. You want it to be pitch black. So even the subtle lights that may come in from like the street, or maybe you have like an alarm clock or other devices, even the that small amount of lighting can impact your melatonin production. So you want to, as much as possible, like get rid of that light too, whether it means having blackout curtains or if you put tape over, like some black tape over the devices, if you use like a night mask or sleep mask, something like that can also help out. So make sure it's pitch black. Melatonin is produced in the dark, cortisol is produced in the light. So we want to be able to allow our body to decipher the difference. Along with that is the artificial lighting is our blue lights. So this means even limiting your blue lights at the hour to 2 hour mark before going to sleep. So that means like cutting off like laptops, phones, iPads, TVs, like really trying to limit that exposure that we're getting because again, it's going to signal to our body that it's still daylight, like cortisol is still supposed to be out and high, and we're still supposed to be running off of our cortisol. So we want to avoid that. If you are using these devices, like if you, whatever, you enjoy it or you're moving away from that, you're still getting into that habit, or maybe you're working late or something like that where you absolutely have to have um, some of that blue light. You could use blue light blocking glasses, and that could be helpful for you to still be able to do what you're going to do, but your body will still get the signals that it's winding time to wind down. Um, let's see, am I missing something else? Oh yeah. Avoiding heavy meals or alcohol before going to bed. This can also make it more difficult for you to have a restorative sleep. And I know a lot of times people will be thinking, oh, when I drink alcohol, like I'm knocked out, like it puts me to sleep. That might be true, but it's not good quality sleep. And even when you drink alcohol before going to bed or like closer to bedtime, you may notice that you wake up earlier the next morning, or you might have some interruptions within your sleep. But regardless, the quality of your sleep is not as restorative, it's not as good. So you want to avoid doing that. Not to mention the impacts that we know alcohol has on our hormones. So overall, doing your best to limit how much alcohol that you're consuming in general. And the last thing, last thing when it comes to our sleep is to be consistent. Have a sleep, have a consistent sleep schedule. So that means going to bed around the same time every day. This includes the weekends because the body doesn't necessarily decipher like weekends or during the day or during the week type thing. So we want to be pretty consistent. I know that could be challenging. So what I do tell people, something that might be a little bit more practical is on the weekends trying to wake up or go to bed within an hour of your normal. So maybe if you normally wake up at 5 a.m. for work or 6 a.m. for work, maybe that's like feels like a really big stretch to still wake up at that time on the weekend. But maybe if you do it within an hour, like maybe you're waking up at 7-ish. But yeah, the more consistent we are, the more our body is able to consistently produce and release these hormones at the appropriate times. Versus like sometimes we're waking up early, sometimes we're waking up late, sometimes it's noon, sometimes it's 6 a.m. Like the body it's really confusing for your circadian rhythm to get back on track. So those are my tips. And if you're confused and you're not really sure, like, is my circadian rhythm out of sync or is it in sync? I'm not really sure. Some symptoms that you might experience if you do have a circadian rhythm that's out of sync would be brain fog, difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep. Maybe you feel like really tired during the day and all you're thinking about is taking a nap, but then once it hits nighttime you're really wired and you feel like you could just like do everything and but you really actually want to go to sleep. um Also menstrual cycle irregularities can link back to circadian rhythm dysfunction. um and yeah, difficulty concentrating is another one. So those are some symptoms that you might be experiencing if it's out of sync. um I think those are the key things I wanted to share with you. I do have a client that I wanted to tell you about that we'll call her A. she she had definite circadian rhythm dysfunction. So she felt like all those things, like the brain fog, difficulty concentrating at work. She had a um, really just like a busy full life. She was married, she has kids, and she would feel so tired and have a difficulty like tending to all of her tasks and duties in all the areas of her life. She was still doing it, but she struggled. And we actually ended up checking her cortisol. And her cortisol, so I told you, right? The curve should be, or the pattern should be like morning, should be higher, and then afternoon it begins to taper off, and then we get to evening where it's the lowest. Hers was like at the bottom all day long. It wasn't quite a flat line or a straight line, but it started low, like really low, and it just got lower. Is basically what it looked like. So she was truly exhausted, and it's another sign when you're so tired that it's like there's no amount of sleep, there's no amount of coffee that helps out. It's just like you're just tired all the time. So that exactly is where she was at. We reset her circadian rhythm. There were a couple of supplements that were really important for her to have and to include to help her out too. But you guys, within like I would say it was about 2 weeks. The next time I talked to her, she's like, I'm good. She's like, I don't have to take naps. I'm not tired anymore. I'm more productive. My brain fog has gone. Like, so by addressing her circadian rhythm and really getting her cortisol back on track, giving some love to her adrenals, adding in some minerals, she was back to herself pretty quickly. So these changes can be small, but they make a really big difference. So if you're feeling really overwhelmed with where should you start, this seems like a lot. I would say two things that you could start with is to first, try to get that sunlight to your eyes every day in the morning. And then the second thing is to limit your blue light before bed. So, like the hour to 2 hours before bed, trying to cut that off. So, those are two things that you can start today that can really help out your circadian rhythm, improve your hormones, improve your fertility, improve your menstrual cycle, and get you your energy back. So, that's what I want to leave you with. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.